Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Patreon Q&A. I apologize, this one's actually going up fairly late this month. We had some changes in my schedule. We have moved the stream back to 5 o'clock-ish, more like 5:30, and it runs for about 3 hours or 2.5 hours or so on and so forth. We've got a slight extension on the amount of time being spent on the stream, basically, which has yielded some good results as far as stuff has gone, but puts a little bit more pressure on time in any case. But that aside, we shall go ahead and we'll get started. I've got a number of questions. The first one is from F. Sergeant C2R, and he asks, what do I think of the dominance of 4/4 time and the 4 chords of pop in music? And for those unfamiliar with music, 4/4 time is basically a way that you read music. 4/4 time is the time signature that most songs are put in. That means you have 4 beats per measure, and a quarter note receives a single count. So, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, of course, there's like 3/4 time, and that would be used for waltz, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, da 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 da. That's waltz. I don't know, 4/4 time, I don't think of it as being, it's not like bad for music or anything like that for the dominance of 4/4 time. It's just an easy way to read music, and most songs just have 4 beats per measure. It's kind of a matter of writing. It's sort of like saying, what do I feel about reading from left to right? Why not top to bottom, like in Japan or something? And, you know, I don't know. There's uses for different time signatures, but there's not a lot of music that actually makes use of that. And the 4 chords of pop actually is not a thing that the chord progressions. There's a lot of chord progressions that kind of like they're popular during certain eras. So there's sort of like I think there's like a doo-wop chord that was popular in prior years, and so on and so forth. And so various chord progressions actually become popular. They sort of fall into vogue. What it's really about is that the human brain just kind of likes patterns that it can predict. And so the 4 chords of pop, it's a pattern that a lot of people's brains can easily predict, so people like to hear it. But you do not have to use the 4 chords of pop. There are other chords available to you, and you know, it's just that that's common right now in the mainstream today. But something else will probably come into vogue a little bit later on if people get sick of the 4 chords of pop. He asks, is there a happy part of 4chan? And of course there's a happy part of 4chan. There's the porn boards. Everyone's very happy on the porn. No, there's happy places on 4chan. There are some boards are less happy than others. I would say Pole has got to be the least happy board on 4chan. B might also be a strong contender for unhappy boards, although they might also be a very happy board. Really hard to say. But you know, it just kind of depends on the thread and whatever. It's just like people talking, sometimes complaining and grousing about stuff, but other times just having a good time. Depends on the thread that you're in. If you go into a thread that people made specifically to complain about something, then likely it's going to be an unhappy thread. But if you go into a thread about how great something is, then likely that's going to be a very happy thread with people saying things. Some threads are funny, some threads are very jokey. So of course there's happy places on 4chan, but they move around. You never know where you'll find them. You have to scan the catalog and go over things, comb the site for happiness, and find it where you can. How would you compare the relationship of the USA and Cuba to the relationship of the USA and North Korea? And very different. The relationship of USA to Cuba until recently was basically that we put our fingers in our ears and refused to believe that Cuba existed. This was kind of our relationship to Cuba. We did not like them because they were communist, and now I think we are opening relationships, but who knows what'll happen after the Obama presidency closes. They're making a big political stink of it now, but it might be theater. I mean, like, there's been a lot of theater lately, more theater than progress, really, in our politics. So they might leave relations open with Cuba, because there's a lot less reason to be against them these days. Yeah, I mean, like, we're not in a happy relationship with Cuba, but we just started talking to them again. North Korea, though, we have a very dysfunctional relationship with North Korea. North Korea is funny in that there's a lot of hurdles involved with dealing with North Korea in a number of different ways. For one, like, we talk about how they're pretty much a generation behind in terms of their technology, maybe even worse than that. Their military is heavily dated. They've got like submarines that are outclassed by just about every ship and in every modern navy. They're falling apart, but the trouble is that they still have guns. I mean, they still have like artillery, for example, lined up along the borders of South Korea. And if they ever want to go to war, then they can shell North Korea. And sure, they'd get wiped off the face of the map pretty quickly because their military is pretty inferior to anything that can be thrown against them today. But the fact that they can still shell, like, the capital of South Korea on the first day and do considerable damage is enough that neither South Korea nor the USA really wants to go to war with North Korea, because it'll be expensive. Worse than that, if North Korea were to fall in war and South Korea had to absorb them, the economic damage to South Korea would be astronomical, because basically they're taking in, like, a really underdeveloped nation where the people are starving, and I mean, like, the dialects have changed. They're not the same culture anymore. They sometimes have people who escape North Korea into South Korea, and the North Koreans are just like they're a completely separate. They're very separate countries now. Like, North Korea and South Korea are no longer part of the same. I mean, they have the same historical origins, but their countries are so vastly different from one another anymore that they speak the same language, but they don't even really sound the same. They have different, like, vastly different accents, different colloquial sayings and things like that. They become very separate cultures. So our relationship with Korea, very challenging. We also get into the nuclear talks. That's one of those things where we're like, North Korea, no more nukes, please. And North Korea says, oh, okay, no more nukes. And then they keep building nukes, and we're like, North Korea, we see what you're doing with those reactors. And they're like, these reactors are for power. They're for power. They power stuff. And then, like, they have experts that come in. They're like, these reactors, not actually into North Korea, but they examine the type of reactors that were like, these reactors couldn't power a light bulb. These are nuclear weapons reactors. And they're like, no, for power. And so they say, okay, right. Well, what if we give you these, like, lightweight nuclear reactors with, like, graphite cooling and whatnot? And it would be, like, uranium-based, and you can power your country with those. And they're like, no, we want plutonium. And they're like, oh, why do you want plutonium? No reason. Plutonium is just more efficient. We want plutonium. Weapons-grade plutonium. And they're like, no, you can have the lightweight reactor. We get in these kind of debates. Politics with North Korea is wacky. It is just wacky. So yes, Cuba, we pretend they don't exist. North Korea, we are aware of their existence, but can never ever come to happy terms with them on anything. Would I comment on my creative process? And the creative process varies from thing to thing. I've talked about this a bit before, but with the Let's Plays, a lot of times what it is I kind of go through stuff and I review what I'm doing, and as I'm playing, I think about what I want to say, and then I'll come back. This is especially true with the MechWarrior stuff, because I have to do so much editing. Like, MechWarrior gets rendered something like 3 times before I even start doing lines for it, so I tend to see, like, a lot of the video with a fine-tooth comb before I even really start doing any voice stuff. So, most of the time I have a pretty good idea of what it is that I want to do before I start the Let's Plays, and then I kind of just run my process. And many times there's not really a script. And this is actually true for a fair amount of things that I do by myself. There will be a script if something's being hand-drawn, for example. But like with the Mentally Advanced series, actually, believe it or not, a lot of that, even when I was using animation, or when I was using frames from the show to make animation, a lot of that was not scripted, actually. Or I would deviate so far from the script that it didn't matter that I had a script. Like, I might write out, it was more like an outline than a script. And part of that's why some people say I have very natural sounding dialogue. It's because as soon as I thought that the pony should, like, have a petty argument about something, I would just kind of run with it. And so a lot of my Let's Plays are kind of based on this too, is I'll have sort of an outline of what I want to do. And then, and I know, like, what's, these are the important parts. And if I think of an argument to have, then I'll just have an argument with myself. And that's how we do it. That's how it's done. And then he asks, what was that about a denial of service attack on my stream? And what that was is that somebody contacted me on Skype, and Skype is like it's a security vulnerability. This has been a problem for a little while. Skype just recently set up to where you can't have your IP stolen as easily, although you can still have it grabbed. But what happened was the guy just contacted me on Skype and he got my IP address, and then he probably just uploaded my IP to, like, Ion Cannon or something like that. There's a lot of ways that you can do a denial of service attack on someone's machine once you have their IP address. So that's what it was. And so for like 2 streams he was doing this, and so then I had to go and I just had to manually change my IP address, which is a pain but not very difficult. So yeah, so that's what happened. For a little while, I was having denial of service trouble, and then got it resolved. So I'm not having it presently. Could have it again. I mean, it's like it's not too hard to get a hold of somebody's IP address. So, but anyone can do it though. It turns out like a denial of service attack does not require a lot of technical skill. You could do it with like, I mean like somebody in grade school could do a denial of service attack if they felt like it. It's easy to do. But anyway, though, Wayward Pony, do you modulate Taylor's voice? And yes, actually, I modulate. The lowest I can go on a good day is down here, maybe a little bit lower if I warm up a bit. So that's about what I do for Taylor's voice. Is actually I just put my voice down low, and then I will drop it by another 10% using voice modulation. So yes, Taylor's voice is modulated. That's why it sounds nothing like me. I cheat on that one. I cheat on Fluttershy too. I do kind of a higher pitch voice and then modulate by 10% for Fluttershy. So, or for Sydney, for those who watch the MechWarrior thing and not the pony stuff. Who would win in Batman versus Spider-Man? And the answer is always Batman with preparation. Spider-Man if Batman was asleep or something. I mean, that's the thing about the fictional superhero duels. Spider-Man kind of has that nifty advantage of spider sense, so even if Batman prepared, Spider-Man would be pretty light on his feet. But I think Spider-Man kind of has a lot of Batman-level villains, only a little bit stupider. Batman tends to deal with super geniuses a lot, whereas Spider-Man tends not to deal with super geniuses so much as he deals with, like, stronger-than-average people who dress up as animals. I mean, like Rhino and Scorpion and stuff like that. So Spider-Man's slightly different class. I think he deals with a slightly dumber class of villain than Batman does. So Batman's wit would pull ahead, and But then again, Spider-Man specializes in fighting people dressed up as animals. So Batman being the man dressed as a bat. Who knows? I guess it would just depend on who's having an off day and who's not. Let's see. Is it not fair use if the footage or product you're using came from something that might be illegal? Like, for example, if you used a cell phone to film a movie, and then you take the footage that you recorded with your cell phone and edit that into like a parody of some sort. Wayward Pony asked if that would be illegal. I don't know if I said the name Wayward. Yes, it's Wayward Pony. If I didn't say the name, yeah. Anyway, so he asked if that would be illegal, and I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give legal advice on stuff. But as far as I understand, it doesn't matter the method that you use to acquire your footage if your intent is to actually chop it up to make it into like a separate critical product. But maybe I might be wrong. I mean, like piracy might be. It could be because maybe it's like if you commit piracy, then like piracy is piracy, but it doesn't matter if. Like, as far as your product goes, like if you make a parody using a pirated product, then the parody itself is not illegal, but the act of piracy might be illegal. I would guess that's probably how it goes. But with something like, for example, a ROM hack, he gave this example, like the ROM hack, like the Pony Fantasy ROM hack. Is it illegal to use a Pony Fantasy ROM hack? I wouldn't know, because really what you're doing is you're making commentary on this Pony Fantasy ROM hack, which may in and of itself be considered transformative because you're taking a pre-existing work and then replacing everything with ponies and rewriting the whole story. And I mean, you're still using the original stuff to kind of do this, but the changes are so drastic. I mean, there's really a lot you can say about the way that that Pony ROM hack was different from the original game. They were just vastly different in terms of character. He even changed some of the game mechanics, so like the game played a little differently as well. So for something like that, it would be hard to say. But I imagine that like when something is gray and you couldn't just easily say, probably like maybe like there. What I've come to discover from being spoken to by people who have the legal expertise is that a lot of times. Many things are very gray, especially when it comes to copyright law, and you wouldn't find out until you go to court. You might have a strong argument one way or the other, but you couldn't say, for sure until a judge ruled for or against you. So that is as far as I understand it. Are there any ways that fans could alert YouTube if a channel were wrongly removed? Like, for example, we had Digibrony got his channel flagged for scamming. And he may be kind of ridiculous, according to some opinions. He may be kind of ridiculous In fact, when he announced this, he went on camera with like a pair of airsoft guns where he painted the tips. Like they come with orange tips, he painted them black. Yeah, he went on camera with a pair of guns and he was like, "I am going to kill myself, everyone." Except he wasn't like funny about it. He was just like, "I am in a dark room and will now shoot myself in the head. Oh, and by the way, if you were wondering what happened to my channel, allow me to explain that." So that was a little bit weird that he did that. It's like a serious issue, like a real problem with using YouTube, and there's a slightly more professional way that you should approach that kind of thing. But anyway, though, no, there's really not any way to contact YouTube or to let them be aware that they have made a mistake. Most of their stuff is automated. That's how, say, for example, oh no, I went and forgot his name. I was just talking about him. That's how Smokey Brony was Smokey. He's got rainbow cigarettes these days. That's how that's how DigiBrony got his stuff taken down. Was basically his stuff gets flagged, and then robots show up, and they're like, yeah, it's a flag. Or if they have people, what they are is it's like some guy in India who's being paid like $1 per hour to go through all these claims, and he just kind of looks at it, and it's just like it just rolls his eyes, sighs, and then shuts down the channel. And so the trouble is that you get enough of these complaints, you get enough people flagging this, and so even if you've got like one person, like if there's one person in India with enough life left in their soul to approve it once, like when it gets flagged again, you just keep bringing it to the attention of these same people, like over and over and over again, and finally you get a disgruntled employee who just says, forget it, and just shuts down the channel. Otherwise, there's a lot of automated stuff on YouTube. So, no, there's not really a way to contact YouTube. If they do something unfair to you, you just have to kind of deal with it. That's the way that YouTube rolls. They prefer not to waste money on protecting their content providers. I really don't think that we're very valuable to YouTube. They really don't act like we're very valuable. Like I've mentioned before, a lot of reports are talking about how ad revenue has been declining, generally speaking, for all people. Like, it's been declining per click. And so, like, every year, YouTube pays out less to the people who are providing content to their site, unless if your fan base is growing, and you're having more people watch your videos, then your income is growing. But if you're staying stagnant, like if you've reached an equilibrium where you have as many people coming in as you have as many people going, then your income should be decreasing according to most reports, on average. Some sites are different. It kind of depends on your content, but yes. Yeah, YouTube has a terrible reputation for they really don't protect content providers at all. They're pretty hostile towards us, in fact. So, I mean, like for example, Yogscast got disabled for like 6 hours for being underage. Somebody flagged them for being underage, and so they went through, and whether by a robot or just a disgruntled employee who was being underpaid, they got flagged for being underage, and so they just got shut down for being underage. There was no investigation, nobody looked into it. They're just like, yeah, everybody's underage, I don't care. And so they just closed it down. And what happened though was a YouTube employee who was a fan of Yogscast noticed this within that 6 hours, and then had the channel reinstated. So by virtue of being popular enough to get noticed by YouTube staff, one of the channels was rescued. So, yeah, it's like that. That's kind of how YouTube functions. It's not very fair, but they have a lot of people, and like I say, I don't think they put a lot of value on it. A lot of people are waiting for another platform to come out that would be functional, but copyright law kind of keeps everybody beaten down. So I don't know if or when another platform would emerge that could be all that useful. If they wind up eroding income severely enough that it doesn't matter whether you're on YouTube or not, then you might see people transition over to sites like Dailymotion or whatever, places that are just less on your case, and maybe that don't run automated kill programs on your website, on your channel. But until then, everybody's just kind of got to deal with it. Dylan Siddle, he says, what is Peyton's nationality? And actually, I've thought about this. I can't remember what name I was going to give her country, but it was going to be from some made-up country, is where Peyton was actually going to be from. And she was really going to be like, she's going to have grown up in Banana Republic through most of her life, but she stayed in this. Her parents have the accent, and she when she was in that country when she was very young, she maintained that accent and never really bothered. She doesn't like the English accent, I guess. I don't know. I haven't thought it through a whole lot, but Peyton's family at the very least is from someplace ridiculous and non-existent. Yeah, so that's Peyton's nationality. She may also just be from Banana Republic. Maybe from like like in the Deep South, everybody has an accent. So maybe like Peyton's just from some place in Banana Republic that has that accent commonly, some little pocket in the mountains where people developed a weird dialect. Heartbeat 94. How long will I keep doing the streams, and have they helped my work at all? And I will keep doing the streams indefinitely, basically, as long as I'm doing art. The streams are a lot of fun. I look forward to them. I enjoy doing them. It's a chance to be social. It's a chance to talk to fans, and it keeps me steady on the stuff like that. Like every single night, I do a bit of work and I get stuff done, and that's good for me. It's very good for me. Aside from the art critiques and whatnot, to get better, to get the basics under control. It's just been great for work ethic as well. So streams, they will keep going, and they've helped a lot. Warp 1092, what do I think of hacker groups like Lizard Squad and Anonymous? And actually, I don't really have a lot of opinions on either of those groups. I don't keep up very much with their politics. I mean, like, and even the trouble is, like, even if you look into those groups to see what they're doing, a lot of times news sources are very silly about their reporting on them. I mean, like, you tend to hear about them from the point of view of, like, very wealthy businesses, kind of, or more like from investors. I mean, like, those will be the groups that'll report on them the most, is they'll be like, oh, Anonymous attacked business website. Businesses don't like these guys. And so that's kind of what you hear about most when you read in the media. Aside from that, I mean, like, I don't know. I don't pay attention to their politics very much, and so I don't really know a whole lot about them, and so I don't really have very many thoughts, I'm afraid. Yes, from Boris Rebo, what is my alcoholic beverage of choice and why? And actually, it depends on how I'm feeling. There's a couple alcoholic beverages that I like. One of the ones that I used to drink a lot back in the day was a Black Russian. That is it's, I believe, what is that now? It's like vodka and Kahlua and no cream. A White Russian is when you add cream to it. But I also enjoy Manhattans, which is bourbon and sweet vermouth with some spirits, and they put cherries in it. You know, so that one's pretty good. I like Manhattan. What else is good? What else do I like? Those are the two that I drink most commonly. I don't know. Occasionally, I'll also drink like straight alcohol of types. For cheapness, I mean, like, I kind of like Southern Comfort. It's affordable. It's whiskey. Can't go wrong. But I really don't drink as much as I used to. Ken's asked me to cut down, and so I did for her sake, and so yeah. So I don't really drink very much anymore. It's not something that comes up as frequently as it did. So I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, though, I've got another one from a mysterious benefactor. He tells me don't give him a shout out. Is there a universal zero velocity? And he asked this in reference to like the universe is moving and the Earth is moving. And I meant to look up the theory of relativity and see if I could get better insight on this. But as far as I'm aware, everything is relative. So like velocities are always relative. That is why in velocity, they say velocity is a vector. You need a direction and a speed. Because there's not really like I don't think that there's a zero velocity because everything is moving in reference to everything else. So for example, if you've got an object sitting still and the Earth is traveling away from it, then relative to the Earth, that object kind of has a velocity. Even the Earth may be what has its momentum, but that point is moving away from the Earth at a particular velocity, and the Earth is moving away. You find this, like, forces are the same way. Like every time, like if you've got an object sitting on the ground, then the object is pushing up on it, or then the ground is pushing up on the object is pushing down on the Earth. So it's every action has an equal but opposite reaction kind of thing, is how this goes. So velocities are sort of an abstraction. I mean, I guess is one way of thinking about it. Like I say, if you're moving away from a point on the ground, then that point on the ground is also moving away from you at the same velocity that you are moving away from it. So it has velocity in the abstract sense. So no, I don't believe. I mean, maybe a physicist would correct me if he had a better. Maybe a physicist would correct me, but as far as I know, there is no such thing as a universal zero velocity. It's all relative. So Boris Rebo asked me some more questions. I think I had Boris Rebo earlier. I started adding more questions to a single note card because I didn't want to start running out of note cards. I've got more questions as we're going along, which is good. So, Boris Rebo, have you played Stalker? And no, I have not played Stalker. I'm afraid that I shoot that question down pretty quickly. It was because it was like, have you played Stalker? And if so, what do you think about such and such? And no, I haven't played Stalker. What is my favorite type of setting? And actually, I like the modern setting, or like early like industrial era are the two settings that I like a lot. Because those are settings that are kind of relatable. Everybody can sort of jump into them and understand a bit how things work. But also they're really rife for satire, because you can use like topical stuff, or you can use superheroes, things like that. There's a lot of things that are set in the modern setting, and that people kind of understand and grasp and can laugh at and have good times. So I like modern settings. I like them very much. Who is best pwn? And there was a time I would have told you Celestia, but I kind of don't feel like this anymore. This was back when I had a certain headcanon for Celestia, and I thought she was best pwn. I assumed that she was a clever politician because she ruled for 1,000 years, but now I just think that maybe ponies are stupid and they never really question their leaders. So Celestia maybe not best pwn. Who's I gonna say was best pwn now? I don't know. I don't really have a best pwn. Shoot, I don't know. I had kind of an amusing response. I had an amusing answer for this, but now I can't think of who the best pwn was. Yeah, we could still say fictional politician Celestia, but oh yeah, I was gonna say best pwn. I do have to admit that I don't like Cadence and Shining Armor as characters really within the show. But I do like a lot of the jokes about them having a rough marriage, where like the two are kind of in a loveless relationship with nothing in common, but because they're like high status and they can't really get away from it, like they can't really separate now, and so that's kind of fun. I don't know, doesn't necessarily make them best pwn, but somebody was just talking about that, as they were like, yeah, I really hate them as characters, but I really like the idea of them being an awful couple that's unhappy. I was like, that's actually pretty good. So yes, am I a big guy? No, Batman, I am not a big guy. I'm 5'7". So no, I'm not a big guy. Wait. Okay, yes, I got all the questions. Anyway, okay. From Robin Brown, how do I feel about Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim? And I have played all of those. Actually, I did not play the ones prior to Morrowind, so there are people who are going to be like, "Oh, Greg is a casual, doesn't know what to talk about." But as far as I'm concerned, I liked certain aspects of Morrowind. Morrowind's story was very tedious to get through, and you really needed a guide to get through it. I felt like, because unlike Oblivion and Skyrim, there wasn't like a marker to tell you where to go for everything. You had to infer on your own time, and I'm really not sure how you were supposed to get through that game in any reasonable amount of time without the quest markers. I mean, like, I had to follow an FAQ to get through that game, and even with the FAQ, it took forever. But the game had a lot more like magic in it. It felt like a much more foreign setting. It was kind of interesting. It just felt like a different sort of world. I mean, you were running into like godmen, like Vivek and the other three, and of course Dagoth, and those people. It felt more magical, and the Dwemer ruins also too were kind of interesting. I really wanted to explore a lot of the Dwemer ruins. The trouble is that Morrowind now has very dated graphics. The graphics were not that good. The textures are not very good. And oh my god, those stupid flying things. What are they called again? Skyrunners or whatever it is. The stupid plague vermin of the sky. Cliff runners. God, everybody hated those things, because you'd just be playing that game and they would just show up like every time you tried to go somewhere, they would attack you. Stupid things. They were hated so much actually by the fan base that I think they've been declared in canon wiped out. They are now dead. There are no more cliff runners in Morrowind, and yes. So Morrowind had a good feel to it. It kind of had a bit of intrigue, and it was a lot of fun. And some of the mods that came out for it were really good. There's a guy named TrainWiz who's very popular, who's done some really interesting mods that were a lot of fun. I played Deus Ex Machina, and I've heard that he's not very proud of that one because it's an older one. But Deus Ex Machina, it's actually really glitchy, to be honest. But I like Deus Ex Machina. It was lore breaking at times and very silly at other times, but fun to play through more all the same. And some of the battles felt pretty big. one thing that I have to say about Bethesda is that they tend to, it seems like, make very boring boss battles. Like, you get to your final battle, and they're just like, okay, now I stand here and shoot at you, and you stand there and shoot at me, and when one of us runs out of health, we will be dead. And that's kind of the battle. But Deus Ex Machina had battles that were a little bit more interesting. There was more going on. I mean, there was at one point you get like lost in a tunnel underground, and there's no light. And like through all the game, you never really needed the like dark sight ability, and so suddenly it was like, oh, dark sight is actually useful now. But Morrowind was good. Oblivion was a bit of a letdown actually after Morrowind, because I was expecting more of the magic and kind of more of the stuff. Like, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go to hell, basically. Like, yeah, and that'll be cool. Except hell was really boring. I mean, it was just kind of like fire water, and it was like red water. And if you go in the red water, you will die unless you have fire immunity. And like you get the sigil stone, and that's great. And then it turns out that every single portal to Oblivion is exactly the same. And it's sort of dull. I thought Oblivion was boring, and it was a little bit frustrating because I didn't like the fact that the real hero of the story was not your character. I mean, like in Morrowind, you were the hero. Like, you did the final thing. I mean, you went up and you fought all these horrible eldritch things. Like, there were people with their faces scooped out, tentacles growing out of their bodies. It seemed like something horrible was going on, and you put a stop to it. In Oblivion, I really wasn't sure who the true bad guys were. Was it the omniscient guards, or was it the demons? Because the demons, at the very least, didn't like come for me across the hills. Like, anytime I walked into a demon stronghold, I didn't have infinitely spawning demons running up to me telling me to stop right there, criminal scum. The guards were far worse than the demons ever could be. So yeah, Oblivion was kind of funny that way, in that the guards were really more, like, the guards in that game were more oppressive than the demons were. Like, it was almost like if Dagon had taken over, if Mehrunes Dagon had taken over, or was it Mehrunes? See, I can't even remember. That's the trouble with it, is it was so dull, I can't even remember which god it was that was trying to take over. I'm pretty sure it was Mehrunes Dagon. But, what did I say before it? Dagon in Morrowind? It was Dagoth, or something like that. Dagon, Dagoth. I don't know. Whatever, anyway. But it was so dull. Like, I just remember, like, he spawned, and your objective was not to fight him. Your objective was just to go around him, which turned out to be, like, really easy. Like, you just sidestep around him, and then run in the temple, and then stupid Martin turns into a dragon, which saves the day. Stupid. Sheogorath's Realm was a little bit better as far as Oblivion. Like, that was decent DLC. But the trouble was that Sheogorath's Realm didn't honestly feel very crazy. It was every bit as bland as Oblivion, but just with slightly different colors. And the fact that the guards still maintained order instead of just being schizophrenic and unreliable really kind of undermined the whole, Realm of Chaos thing. I mean, come on. Like, you go and you steal a man's sweet roll, and the guards show up, and they're like, hey, did you take that sweet roll? I cannot even begin to describe how illegal that is. And then when you become God, they still intercept you. Like, when you become God of Sheogorath's Realm, they still stop you to ask you to return the damn sweet roll. I mean, come on. Like you'd think that you could just tell them, like, please do not bother me again. This is my realm. I will steal the sweet rolls if I want, because it causes chaos. I am the god of chaos. I'm all about sowing. I'm about sowing discord. Just leave me alone. So, yeah, Oblivion kind of felt very limiting, and everything was a little bit bland. Skyrim I rather like. It has pros and cons. It could do with more variety in some regards, but at least it had its own feel. I mean, you got that feel of it being kind of in the frozen north. I mean, there was a lot of snow. They really should have gotten rid of the invisible walls, though. That was one thing that irritated me about that, is that you would hop up the mountain, like you would go out of your way to hop up this stupid mountain, and you'd get to the top, and you'd be like, there it is, the peak of the mountain. All I have to do is just run down the side of this mountain now, and I'll be at where I want to go. And you learn this lesson a few times. You get to the peak of the mountain, and you cannot cross the peak of the mountain. Why? Because there's an invisible wall. Why? No reason. It doesn't really, it just forces you to follow the pathways. That's all that really happens. I guess because monsters can't spawn on the peaks, and so they didn't want you to go where monsters couldn't spawn. But very frustrating. I mean, like, you put mountains in the game and have them be completely impassable, even if the player, like, there were times it just felt very stupid. Like, I'd be hopping up the mountain, I'd be like, this is stupid. I'm not supposed to do this. This is very stupid. Like, I should have at least had the reward of going through all that trouble, and then I'll just climb down the other side of the mountain now. But no, I got to the top of the mountain, and I couldn't climb over it because of the invisible walls. But as far as gameplay went, Skyrim was a little bit more fluid. I mean, like, the combat system is a little bit more fluid. It's not deeply engaging, but nothing in the Bethesda series has ever been really deeply engaging as far as combat goes. Spells were improved. I thought they were streamlined a bit. Enchantments got spruced up a bit. In Oblivion, enchantments were kind of meh. It was better to have the sigil stones than it was to have the enchantments, and Skyrim kind of replaced some of that. But to be honest, all three of the games, really not that amazing until you start getting some good mods out there. And then once you have really good mods out there, then they're much better games. So I personally don't recommend playing them except for on PC. They're good on the PC. Warp 1092, I think we had another question from me. What is your take on the Doomsday Clock? Actually, it occurs to me that now it's going to make it really challenging to jump to people's questions. But anyway, the Warp 1092, what is your take on the Doomsday Clock? They've had these for quite a while, actually. I remember when I was in, like, high school, in grade school, they had a sort of doomsday clock, and it was wrong. They had like a death clock. You'd click on it, and it would tell you when you were gonna die. You know, these things. These are silly fictional things. Justin, which pony race would win a civil war? This is what he asks. Probably the unicorns. Most people think the unicorns because the unicorns are capable of archery and other things. Who knows? But the Pegasi are depicted as sort of the militant race, so. Maybe they're the stronger fighters. The Earth ponies can make food though, so really as a combined group they make sense. It seems like they all kind of specialize into their own little things. So if they had a civil war, I guess the other two races would starve. The Earth ponies would get destroyed, and then the other two races would starve. So nobody would win. Famine would prevail in the pony civil war. What is your favorite point and click? Oh, that too, and the Wendigos would come back. Freeze everybody to death. What is your favorite point-and-click adventure game? And I actually did not play a whole lot of these. I had a few when I was a kid. I remember King's Quest most prominently. But the trouble with those old games is that quite a number of them were very challenging to go through unless you knew exactly what you were doing. King's Quest, the one that I played, was especially bad this way. They had times where you could permanently ruin the game because you would do something like you would go down to the town square and a man would throw out the garbage. And I had my sister actually lose the game once without realizing that she had lost. Like, the game became unwinnable, but doesn't tell you this, because early on in the game, she went by a tree, like she bought a music box or something like that, and she wanted to hear the music box, so she winds up the music box, and she sets it down and plays the music box. And so, lo and behold, after she does this, a little bird comes down to hear the music box as well. And this was the thing that you were supposed to do later in the game, but because she triggered the bird to come down and listen to the music box, the shopkeep doesn't go to throw out his trash, so she couldn't get an item that she needed to survive when she traveled to another part of the game, so you would just lose. There was no way to win, and there was no way to realize that playing that music box is what had ruined everything. Like, we had to get out an FAQ to figure out, we had to search online and find a guide that basically explained if you play the music box in front of this tree, which is where she chose to do this, quite randomly, then a bird will come down, and the bird will listen to the music box, and you can catch the bird, and then tie a letter around the bird, and it turns out the bird is the princess's pet, and the bird will deliver the letter to the princess, letting you know that you are in town looking to rescue her, and she will not give up hope and kill herself at some point in the middle of the game. Something like that. So yeah, point-and-click adventure games. I don't really have a favorite point-and-click adventure game, but I did play them, and I just remember them being, they were charming for the way that they were always so, they were probably charming for just how obtuse they were. Like, when you can actually sit down and go through them with a guide. Sam and Max point-and-click adventure. That was my favorite point-and-click adventure game. I almost forgot. Sam and Max was fun. Sam and Max you could beat without using a guide. The guide was helpful, but you could get through most of the game, and the game didn't screw you, as far as I recall, for failing to pick up something earlier on. I mean, there was all kinds of stuff that you had to do that might have been confusing, but a lot of the game was kind of just about you being a jerk. Like, for example, like every time you went into the gas station, Max would want to go to the restroom, and so you would ask for the key, and the key had like a file on it. So, like Sam would take the key, and he would go and he would go to the restroom, and then he'd come back and he'd give the key back. But if you ran outside and intercepted Max before he came back with the key, you could tell him to just keep the key out of spite, because it was a point-and-click adventure game. And so a lot of that game was kind of based around spite and silliness, and so I think there were times that it was hard that you might not intuitively figure out certain aspects of it. One of my favorite tools was use max. Like you could use objects on things, and like you could always use max on objects. And there was a lot of really funny comments on like if you tried to use max on somebody, like it'd be like you'd use max on a lady, and Sam would often have different comments about whether or not that was a good idea. So yeah, Sam and Max, that was my favorite point-and-click adventure game. Yes. What language outside of English and Danish would you like to learn? There was a brief period where I tried to teach myself Russian, but I didn't really know anyone who spoke Russian, so it didn't do me a whole lot of good. I can still read a lot of the letters. And for a little while, I mean, I could like read sentences and make sense of them, but I didn't learn enough, and now I've forgotten it all because I didn't ever use it for anything. So yeah, that was a language. What's my favorite 90s cartoon? This is another one I don't know for sure. I know of one that was underrated that I liked a lot. SWAT Cats, I always thought was pretty cool when I was a kid. I don't know if it was my favorite 90s cartoon, but I can't remember what all was in the 90s, because that's like a whole decade of cartoons. I can't remember from when I was like a little kid to when I like 10 whole years. But SWAT Cats I used to like. I think of that off the top of my head. That was about a pair of cats that flew a fighter jet, and when I was a little kid, I thought that was awesome. They had all kinds of nifty gadgets and things like that. SWAT Cats, like the SWAT Cats. If you could be a professional athlete of some sort, what sport would you be a professional athlete in? I was a really big fan of mixed martial arts for a while. Personally, I'm a bit, well, maybe I'm not a bit small for it. I might have kind of a short reach, to be honest, for boxing. And this is sort of a big problem. Is if you have very short reach, then it's very difficult to hit the other guy unless you're a little bit quicker. You can make up for it. But I always trained with guys that were a lot bigger than myself. I'm very small, 5'7", not a very long reach, not a lot of weight behind me. And so, you know, I don't know, also probably not aggressive enough, to be honest. But if I possessed the aggression to be a professional MMA fighter, then that would be something that I would like to do. Provided that I made it, and I wasn't one of the guys that was kind of like dumped a bunch of money into it and then got nothing out of it. Yes. When is my doomsday device ready? Justin asks. And if I told you, it would spoil the secret. It would spoil the fun. So you cannot know. Peter Kordash, have you considered doing shorts when you get faster at drawing? And yes, I have, but I don't know how realistic that's going to be. As it is, I'm spending about 3 hours a night on work, and then I have to try to spend about 3 hours during the day otherwise on work, and so that way I get 6 hours a day. And if I spend 6 hours every day on work, then that gets me about a 40-hour work week. In reality, though, I tend to spend more than 6 hours a day on stuff, because things don't get done and I have to put more time into them to finish them off before it becomes way past the deadline that I want. And that's why the change in deadline with the stream has put me so off schedule with other stuff. It's difficult to find time to get everything done in the day. So I don't know if I'll do shorts, but I've thought about it, and if I can, I will. So, yes. Connor Walsh, what do you think of the possibility that all low-wage and many high-wage jobs might become automated in the future? And actually, this is a topic of sci-fi speculation. This is one of these things as we get closer and closer to post-scarcity. What exactly are we going to do? I mean, are we going to pay people just to live? Is that realistic? And what's wacky is that I suppose if you look at the numbers, there are some analysts that think that we could honestly pay people just for living. But the question is, could you convince the world's wealthiest people to give up their money to pay people just to exist? Because I'm pretty sure the answer is no. It's sort of strange. I've wondered about this as well. I remember when I played Final Fantasy X, this actually really bothered me. Like, because Waka's like, yeah, the Machina did all the work and the people just played all day. And I thought to myself, now, what happened when the Machina started to replace all the low-wage workers and they couldn't afford to live? And then, when did they transition into only play? because you know that at some point, I mean, the people who started playing first were probably the rich, and then like the poor probably spent a lot of time starving and wishing that they could play, but having no money, and basically selling themselves, any way that they could. So I don't know. It has the potential. The whole like rapidly automating jobs thing has the potential. If we don't make new jobs to make up for it, then it has the potential to cause serious harm. But the question that gets raised is, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, well, automation will erase a couple jobs, but we'll create new jobs with it. But I don't know, because we're seeing more and more where productivity is rapidly increasing in a lot of businesses, and it's getting to where like a mostly automated factory can do things that normally would require hundreds of people. Now it only takes like 10 guys and like a bunch of robots, and they're getting really, really productive, and so all the profits are just going to the top. And there's not as many people being employed, and all these profits go to the top, and like the top, the company doesn't really like have extra stuff they want to do with it, except for to buy up their competitors or lobby the government for a bunch of laws and stuff like that. So, I don't know. It would just depend on kind of how politics go. At the current rate, with the wealth getting concentrated to a ridiculous degree at the top, it's not looking real rosy. But that's not to say it won't necessarily turn around. David Silver, do you play tabletop RPGs? And yes, I talk about them sometimes. We have personal time episodes where every now and then I talk about old RPGs and the games that I played. I don't play them nearly as often as I used to, though. I don't have as much time. None of my friends have as much time. Some of my friends have kids, and others of my friends have full-time jobs, so it's tough. And of course, like I say, with me working about 6 hours a day, there's not a lot of time that I can go out and just say, like, I will devote a day to role-playing. So I don't get to roleplay as much as I used to. Jeremy Butler, how are things? Things are going okay. Financially speaking, I'm doing all right. Post January and February, income is down as far as YouTube goes, but that's common. A lot of times you see like a build up in December, and then they have a big drop off in income. Patreon is doing really great. I'm in the top 100 patrons. They sent me an email and also a handwritten letter, and I thought that it was my tax information, but actually it was just a handwritten thank you letter, and that was really sweet. I need my tax information though. So yes. Yeah, so Patreon is doing good. If things keep going well with Patreon, then pretty soon it won't matter what's going on with YouTube. We'll be good. So that's the goal, is eventually to become just independent from YouTube. That's the best possible thing, because YouTube has been such a pain in the ass. If I could get to where I don't have to rely on it, and I could, I mean, like, because like I say, you get in these scares where you see like YouTubers just get taken down off the site for no reason. They didn't do anything wrong, and then YouTube is just like, yeah, I don't really care, and they just take people down. So the ability to just uproot and move to a brand new site and not have to worry about YouTube and what they're doing to people, that would just be glorious. So that's going well. Kenza was in town. That was nice. Got to see Kenza. She's back in Denmark. We're trying to figure out now. We're gonna save up some money to hire a lawyer to help us figure out how to get me into Denmark. And this is going to be challenging because Denmark is really hard to immigrate to if you're not in the European Union. Maybe vaguely impossible, actually. I believe that if I could actually go to Sweden, and I think that if I'm earning $20,000 a year, I could move to maybe a low-income area of Sweden and just kind of like live in a place that doesn't require as much to survive. If I budget really carefully, I could get to that. I'm not quite making $20,000 a year, but it's an option. If I can earn enough money that I can move to Sweden, then that's something that I could do. They'll allow that on self-employment. Denmark, I believe, I need to check up on this, but I believe that I could stay in Denmark on a similar situation. But I can't recall. It may also be that Denmark requires me to have the money in the bank. So for me to stay for like 2 years, I would have to save up $50,000 or something like that, and then just show to them like, see, I have enough money in the bank that I just don't care. And they'll be like, oh, okay, great, you can come over. But the rules for reuniting with the spouse in Denmark are incredibly strict. So like if Kenza and I get married, basically we're screwed. Denmark won't let me in for another like 3-4 years, something like that, because of the way the rules work, at least as far as we understand it. This is why we're going to hire a lawyer. But I'm actually not confident that Denmark will let me in at all without exploiting some kind of bizarre, unconventional loophole. Because we've heard of other couples that have had this exact same problem. is apparently this is common. And when a Danish woman falls in love with an American man, it's very common for the woman to be younger. And according to Danish law, the way that it works is that the two of us have to have a combined attachment to Denmark that is greater than our combined attachment to the other country. So because I'm in my late 20s and Kenza's in her early 20s, we have a greater combined attachment to the U.S. than we do to Denmark. Therefore, Denmark considers me ineligible to marry Kenza. Or I can marry her, but I certainly can't live with her. That would just be absurd. So, once she reaches a certain age, like when she gets old enough that Denmark starts to admit that, like, okay, maybe you should start a family now, or maybe it's going to get to be too late. Like, as she gets closer to her 30s, I think she has to be, like 26 or something like that. That's when they would finally let me just move in. When they finally just say, well, I guess you're not going to get it, like, you're not getting any younger. I guess you can come over. That's when it'll happen. So we have to wait till, like, Kenza's 26, or we have to exploit some kind of loophole. So this is a bit of a pain in the ass, but that's how that's going. What else is going on in my life? I mean, I don't know. Things are going okay in the broad sense. Things are doing good. Yeah, there's not a lot of other important things. I mean, like, I cooked food yesterday. I had shrimp and spaghetti and pineapples. It was really good. Stir fry. That was nice. That's a thing. Mutton Leafy asks, what's the most terror-wracking thing that you have ever read, played, or watched? And actually, Amnesia, The Dark Descent, was probably one of the most terror-inducing thing that I've ever really played or watched or anything with. And this was not because Amnesia was specifically, not because of the atmosphere. What it was is that I didn't realize that the drums played when the monsters showed up, and so I would play that game, like, I followed the rules. The game, you know, it's like, play this game in the dark and try to set up your atmosphere, and I was like, okay, and I could get through it. But the fact that I didn't realize that the game played drums when monsters showed up made me incredibly stressed out and paranoid in that game. And it was so bad that I actually had to play it in spurts. Like, I was like, oh, here we go. Okay, I'm feeling kind of stressed, I'm gonna quit. And it wasn't like scared, it was just that, like, I spent so much of that game being paranoid and ready to run, or trying to hide or avoid things, while also trying not to stay in the dark for too long. I didn't realize that you could just know when the monster showed up. And then when I found out, when someone told me, I was like, yeah, game stresses me out. I never know when I'm gonna get ambushed by monsters. They just come out of the blue. And they're like, oh, you know that it plays drums when the monsters show up anywhere in your vicinity? And I was like, it does what? And they were like, yeah, it just plays drums when the monsters showed up. And after that, it didn't cause me anxiety anymore. It quit being so terror-inducing. I was just like, oh, because then every time the drums played, I just went someplace and I hid, and I waited for the drums to go away. And I was like, oh, okay, this is super easy now. So then it quit being scary. But for a while, when I was confused and didn't know that happened, it was a very frightening game. It's a very stressful game. Maybe not frightening so much. It was just stressed me out. Meat, what is 0 multiplied by infinity? It's 0. It's 0 an infinite number of times. Meat provided me. He was like, because I was thinking about. I think he was like trying to figure out limits, and he was saying, like, if you multiply 0 by infinity. But no, I mean, it's like, what is 0 an infinite number of times? It's still 0. Like infinity times nothing is nothing. This is like anything divided by 0. Anything multiplied by 0 is nothing. Something divided by 0 becomes infinity, though, if you're taking limits into account. But yes, 0 multiplied by anything is always 0, because, like, you cannot, like, if you do, think of it as, like, you do infinity 0 times, you have 0. If you do 0 an infinite number of times, you have 0. This is just 0, nothing. That's how that works. Yes, Matthew Grisham. Any plans to use or reference the world your MechWarrior Let's Play is based on? And sort of, yes and no. We plan to have Ray and Peyton and Sydney and others. They're going to appear within other series. We are working on Banana Republic, so they will show up. We will have them be around. Not so much the MechWarrior universe. We don't really have any ownership of the MechWarrior universe. We just use it for that Let's Play. But they will be in Banana Republic, and so you'll see those characters, and a little bit of the romance that we hint at potentially might be in there. So yeah, we will use that. Wayward Pony, what do I make of the change in the definition of broadband? And this is something that's actually kind of recent. The change in broadband was that the FCC, amidst all the conflict that people have had with the recent merger talk between Comcast and Time Warner, I mean, basically, people have in the U.S. are sick of our broadband carriers, and we kind of hate the cable companies, and we wish that they would all just explode. And when Comcast came forward and they're like, hey, we're one of America's most hated companies, period, and we are going to merge with Time Warner and own like a huge monopoly. Like, we'll have monopolies over tons and tons of areas. I mean, we already didn't compete, so it's not really like it's a big deal. Thousands of people came forward. There was like hundreds of thousands of complaints towards the FCC. And so the FCC was like, oh, okay, we'll delay this talk, that we'll delay this. And so what happened then is once it blew over a little bit, they approved the merger. And I you know what, I cynically looked at that, and I thought to myself, like, oh my God, like, I thought to myself, you know, maybe they're just delaying this until the public outrage dies down, and then they're going to approve it. But that would be really awful. Like, that would be like they heard the American public and then willfully just ignored it on purpose to benefit themselves. And sure enough, that's what they did. So they've approved the merger. They're going to merge. Comcast is going to merge with Time Warner. The FCC has approved that. But basically, what the change in broadband is it used to be that 4 gigabytes of download was considered broadband, and they're changing that now to 25 gigabytes of broadband. So that would mean like my current internet barely classifies as broadband in the U.S. because mine's like 30 gigabytes download. They did want to go ahead and say there was someone who was pushing to get it moved up to 100 gigabytes per second, but they lobbied really hard. They lobbied as hard as it was. They lobbied really hard against 25 gigabytes per second because they didn't want to. I mean, like basically our cable providers have no real interest in upgrading the infrastructure. It's expensive, and they'd rather just price gouge. So when they proposed doing this, they just kind of threw a fit. They were like, no, it's broadband. If it's 4 gigabytes download, it's broadband. And also too, DSL services, most of them can't reach that. They can't reach 25 gigabytes. I think one of the highest speeds that you can get with DSL is like 15 gigabytes per second. Gigabytes, they're different. Anyway, though, whatever it was, it's 10 gigs, whatever is bytes, bits. I don't know. Whatever the case it is that a lot of America, it's going to be that once they change the broadband definition, only 80% of the U.S. will have broadband. Our remaining 20% will have no access whatsoever. It's not available in any way, shape, or form. Broadband internet will not be available to 20% of Americans once they change this definition. Like I said, they wanted to change it. There were people who wanted to change it to 100 gigs. Because there's a lot of places in Europe that are switching over to like fiber cable, and they're running like 100 gigs. You know, they're competitive. And in fact, Google Fiber is trying to do this. Is they're trying to move over to like this, you know, at least competitive with Europe kind of thing. But our cable providers don't want that. They want to provide crap internet at high prices, and so that's what they're gonna get. They're gonna get to merge with Time Warner. They're gonna get to provide crap internet. This is kind of how things go. So what do I make? I think that they recognize that basically our service providers are not going to improve if they can avoid it. So they're changing the definition so that service providers can no longer say that they're providing broadband. Like if they want to sit on their crappy low-end connections, then they have to admit to customers that they're providing a crappy low-end connection. They can no longer call like some of the worst internet in the Western world broadband. They have to refer to it as crap. I mean, they don't really. They just refer to it probably as a standard connection. Or maybe they refer to it as double platinum diamond edition connection because they can still do that. They can still hoodwink you. They just can't call it broadband anymore. So it's cosmetic, basically. It's the bottom line. It's a cosmetic change. The FCC is still fundamentally working for the cable companies. So, I mean, at least that's my take, especially after the recent decision with the Comcast merger. So it's just cosmetic. I mean, it's like they'll just have to change what they call their broadband service. They'll change it to something else. But anyway, though, that's it. That's it for all the questions. So a special shout out, a big thanks. Oh, before we do this, I will say I got a couple emails from people who around the turn of the new year. They remarked that they were having some financial trouble and that they would have to drop out, and they apologize and all that. And it's cool, guys. Don't worry about it. I know that like I said, I got a couple of emails that were they were like, oh, I'm sorry, Greg. But look after yourselves. Don't worry about it. I'll do what I do. You guys do what you do, and it's fine. It's fine. But anyway, though, special thanks. That said, special thanks though to. Yeah, should I say anything else? Be more heartfelt. I mean, I should be more heartfelt. I appreciate the support that you guys have provided, and you made it possible for us to do this. Without the Patreon support, we wouldn't be able to do this quite like we have. I wouldn't be drawing episodes of the Mentally Advanced series. I wouldn't be improving at art. I would not be doing the streams. I would not have discovered how much I enjoy art. So like I say, I appreciate if you donate now, or plan on donating, or donated in the past, but you've had to pull out, or you might have to pull out because of any financial trouble. Don't worry about it, guys. I appreciate it, and like I say, look out for yourselves. You looked out for me. Look out for yourselves. So thank you. So thank you for helping me out. Very good. It does mean a lot. So that's it. So a big shout out to Meat, Kirk DePew, Alicia Lampkin, John Curry, Vladimir Lestrade, Chad Harrelson, Sebastian Weinberg, Justin, Zoe, Shori Knight, Lorenzo Perez, Nathan, Jacob, David Malinsky, Smash Lampjaw, James David White, Arnan Pillay, Milford Carbuncle. Is it Milford and Carbuncle? I can't remember now. Palpatinas, Sky, Blue Moon, Chase Falcon, Tristan Morris, Jeremy Butler, Ryan Sconard, Adam Detman, Andy Arminio, Jonathan, Anthony Nolan, Marcus Christensen, Severin Mahoney Marsh, Sylvia Mandragon, Wireball McCarter, Silver Eagle, Toby92, Charlie Diamond, Zeno Ferrer, Ruben Javier, Shady Crafts, Jacob Dussier, Jacob Dussier, Greg Bishop, Arthur O'Connor, Peter 195, Felt 101, James Liu, Crash Collision, Matt, Robert Yeager, Christian He, Boris Rebu, Sulratic Nyax, Michael Frank, General Disorder, Mutton Leafy, Amanda Niles, Charles Martin, Phantom 360, Dylan Siddle, Warp 1092, David Silver, Samuel Albert Mell, Michael Efforts, Matthew Grisham, Ryan Green, Jordan, Austin Nugent, Augusto Nicholas Chicas, Limey Pony, Sean Mount, Stephen Abbott, Harvey94, Robin Brown, Peter Cordash, Wayward Pony, Kosho, Grant Davis, and Connor Walsh. So yes, that is it. I'll try to get the next one online a little bit sooner, guys. Again, sorry for the delay, but aside from that, I will catch you guys next time.